right, I would like to welcome and introduce our next moderator of the next panel, Hanna Skandera, who serves as president and CEO of the Daniels Fund. The Daniels Fund, founded by cable pioneer Bill Daniels, aims to transform communities through grant making and college scholarships across 4 states, celebrating giving away $1 billion since 2000. Nationally recognized for her expertise in education, Hanna has held leadership roles in New Mexico, California, and Florida, and serves on multiple boards, contributing significantly to education initiatives and leadership programs. Please welcome Hanna to the stage.
Good afternoon. Oh, maybe not this one. Hello? There we go. Good afternoon. I feel like I've had an introduction, so I won't say much about myself other than it's great to be here and great to have this discussion. And I get to facilitate a conversation with some amazing, esteemed higher ed individuals. And I think for me, it is no secret that higher ed has a lot on its plate right now. And whether you read the above the fold or below the fold in your local newspaper or national newspaper, there's a lot going on. And then there is higher ed and how is higher ed preparing the next generation for the workforce? And what does that look like? And how can we continue to evolve and be agile in an ever-changing environment? So I will just say that I'm excited to hear from our distinguished panel, and I'll give a quick introduction, but I want to just lay a little groundwork. I'm sure many of you know these statistics and know a lot about higher ed and workforce, but just to give a little context for Colorado and our higher ed space. According to the Lumina Foundation, Colorado has one of the nation's most educated workforces, ranking first with 62.9% of our population aged 25 to 64 having some form of post-secondary credential. That's the good news. This is largely the result of talent coming to the state with their credentials, not Colorado graduates pursuing post-secondary education programs. In Colorado, high school graduates going to college was more than 10 percentage points below the national average at 49.9%. The national average is 61.8%. I'm also sure you're pretty familiar with our current data around student debt. We have all read student debt has hit more than a $1.7 trillion figure nationwide. Of that, according to the U.S. Department of Education, Coloradans owe more than $29 billion collectively, with an average of about $37,000 per borrower. I don't know about you, I grew up below the poverty line. I got to pay, and I say I got to pay for my education all the way through grad school. And I don't know if I could have done it today. I worked full time. I don't know if I could have done it today. At least in the way that I was able to afford as I was going through school. I had a goal of no debt, and I made it. I know so many young people today that are wrestling with how do I do this and do it well going forward. So we have a lot of we have the goal and the job of preparing our graduates, and at the same time we have a lot of dynamics that are impacting the ability to do that well. In addition, I would put on the table that the perception around higher ed is changing. When I was a kid, I'll say it again, everyone, go to college. College is the upward mobility trajectory. And for many, it is absolutely still the case. But it was definitely the 4-year college degree that was the pathway to possibility. And I think that perception is shifting. And I'm excited to hear from our panel, because I think we've got a group of leaders who are agile and responsive and thinking through how to best match the dynamics of the day. And I will just say once again, just a shout out to our leaders, because as I said, if you're reading the newspaper, there's a lot more going on in higher ed than the traditional education. I'll just put it that way. I'm sure there's a lot of education going on, but there's a lot more than that. And that's a lot to manage and think about. And if you're really in the weeds, you're aware that there is something called the FAFSA that gives a lot of folks information about students and their income that informs a lot about what they have access to. And we're currently in I'm going to call it a debacle, which leaves most of our kids who need the most help without clear information about what they're going to get this fall. So like I said, and all that is going on, we have some incredible leaders that are really forging pathways forward that are agile, responsive, and innovative when it comes to the workforce. So I want to welcome to the stage our panelists, and I'll start with John Marshall. He is the 11th president of Colorado Mesa University, which is a mid-sized comprehensive public university in Grand Junction, Colorado. Under his leadership, the campus has taken an innovative, values-based approach with focus on radical affordability and serving first-generation students. Welcome, John. Amy Parsons, the 16th president of Colorado State University, brings 17 years of higher education experience and a private sector background to her role, previously serving in senior executive leadership roles at CSU and the CSU system. Parsons' achievements include navigating fiscal challenges during the Great Recession, leading comprehensive salary equity surveys, and overseeing a significant physical transformation at CSU. Welcome, Amy. Dr. Mordecai Brownlee is the 6th president of the Community College of Aurora, spearheading significant changes and improvements in the student success agenda within the first 3 years of his presidency, including embarking upon the college's first capital project in 24 years, record-breaking fundraising, hiring the largest and most diverse faculty ranks in the college's history, developing its first school of nursing, and, punctuation mark, increasing student completions by more than 20%. Welcome, Mordecai. And last, but certainly not least, Dr. Andy Feinstein is the 13th president of the University of Northern Colorado. Since joining in 2018, he has implemented a comprehensive 10-year strategic plan, pursued the creation of an osteopathic medical college, and strengthened the university's financial position, all while maintaining a students-first focus and fostering an inclusive environment. He has also led efforts among the presidents and chancellors of Colorado's public colleges and universities to ensure institutions advocate for the needs of higher education with one voice. Welcome. I got to a few of you in advance and said I might change up the script a little, and all said they were good with it. Sorry, Andy, I didn't get to you. Good luck. No.
As long as I'm not have the first question. Right?
You won't be at the first at any one of the curveballs if there are some. So, I'll start this is for everyone, and John, I'll start with you, so we'll know where we're beginning. And just in candor, the private sector often dismisses higher education's calls for more money. Perhaps there is a misunderstanding of the funding model, how your institutions differ from other types of large-scale organizations, or even how campus priorities are established in the first place. Give us a quick primer on why Colorado institutions seem to always be calling for more money from the General Assembly. Good luck.
Other than that, I wasn't playing Mrs. Lincoln. Well, good afternoon, everybody. Thanks so much for your courtesy. Welcome to what I hope is a really interesting conversation. I'm from Grand Junction, sunny western Colorado. Despite a popular myth, it is within Colorado. It has not been taken by Utah just yet. The conversation around funding is a challenging one in some ways because Colorado is a somewhat low investment state. So you can look at that one of two ways. I think our colleague Tony Frank does a nice job of talking about the efficiency of that in terms of Colorado's ability to produce 40 degrees, and that is true. But what I would say is if you close your eyes and you said, let me start from scratch, clear the decks, wipe the board, how would you fund higher education in Colorado? I think what you would do is you'd say, we think a kid in Fort Collins and Greeley and Denver and Grand Junction are all worth something to the state of Colorado, and we all have an interest in their future. You might even go the next step and say those kids that are first in their family to go to college best predictor of whether we get a college degree, right? More powerful than race, income, geography, is whether your parents got a college degree, specifically mom. If mom has a college degree, your odds of getting a college degree are exceptionally high. And if neither of your parents have a college degree, it's going to be a long road. And so if we're serious about changing the dynamic in Colorado, I would posit to you that we've got to get serious about supporting, attracting, keeping, and providing opportunities for first generation students. And so to bring it back around this question around funding, the question is, what are our values? What is it that we support? And we should be able to look to our funding and see that reflected. And I would argue today, while we have made some good strides in that regard, I don't think we're there. I don't think we're quite where we want to be in terms of trying to see those students who need it the most an opportunity with higher education. I don't think we've got that aligned just yet.
I can add one thing to that, if that's all right. You know, and this goes to also, Hannah, what you said at the beginning, is when you think about funding for higher education in Colorado, when I was in school at CSU, my tuition dollar, about 65% of it was paid by the state and the rest by the family. Today, that's flipped, right? So a lot of us used to say when we were in college, I could work my way through college. I didn't have to take out a lot of student loans. I think what a lot of people didn't realize is how much the state paid of that versus now. So it's actually not so much that the cost of college has gone up, it's who's paying for college that has flipped over time. Whereas it was, 2/3 roughly the state of Colorado when I was in college, now it's 1/3 today, and 2/3 is paid for by the family. So who pays has shifted more than the cost of higher education going up. But I think what might surprise some people, and to your point about debt, overall student debt, at least at CSU, is actually going down. So today, graduates of CSU who are graduating this week, about half of the students are graduating with no debt at all. And of the students who are graduating with debt, this year we anticipate the average is $22,000. And not, insignificant, but $22,000 and the default rate is less than 2%. Students are paying it off because they're getting good jobs. So what I worry about is this narrative about student debt that will prevent people from going to college, and that message of us getting through of if you are the lowest income students, if at CSU, if your family makes below about $75,000, you don't pay tuition at all. That is paid for through financial aid, through a combination of state and federal and private, and we guarantee that to students. So a lot of it is messaging more than reality when we're telling the story about cost and student debt.
I would add that when I arrived in 2018, Colorado was at the bottom of this country as far as funding higher education. We were 48th out of 50 states in per capita funding. We're now at about 39 out of 50, which still isn't great, but it's a lot better. And I would argue that we have a lot of businesses that understand that investing in higher education is investing in economic development. We have a lot of members, our elected officials in the Joint Budget Committee and legislature that are supporting higher education. In fact, we've seen significant investments in the last couple of years in higher ed. So although there is certainly a concern and narrative on affordability and some concerns, I think there's also a lot of people that understand investing in higher education is investing in the state of Colorado.
I'll jump in there and just say that, and good afternoon, everybody. Honored to be here. My source on this would be the National Education Association. I think it's important to put this all into perspective, nationally speaking. I think that the work that we're hearing here from a Colorado standpoint, I think, is to be celebrated. With that said, there are 37 states around the country that have reduced the amount of funding to higher education around the country. And so this has had an impact on the price points, as well as what institutions nationally have had to do in order to keep afloat. And I think that we're watching this play out on a national scale, especially now with the higher education relief funds that were provided due to the CARES Act during the pandemic. Institutions, for the most part, are entering or have just completed their fiscal year, their very first fiscal year, without those HERF funds and being able to claim those losses. And I think that that in itself is also going to be very a telltale over the next, I would give it 24 to 36 months to see what institutions are able to do from a price point standpoint to make sure that they are not thriving and surviving on the backs of the students, the ones with the dreams.
This is for all of you as well. We've heard today Colorado's workforce is dynamic, mobile, and diverse. Against that backdrop, many believe that our historically traditional higher education system should evolve and that the idea of enrolling students who attend college full-time, live on campus, kind of that, when I was a kid experience, needs to change. How are you thinking about that? Are you seeing that? And what are some of the unique things that you're doing on your campuses as you think about that?
Maybe I can start. We certainly have changed. If you think about what has happened in this country in the last 4 years, how universities have pivoted with technology, with artificial intelligence, with addressing the pandemic. Yes, we have a lot of traditional students. We have 18 to 22-year-olds that are coming to our universities and expecting a college experience. But we have a lot of people coming from industry looking for credentials, for certificates. They're asking for specialized educational experiences. We heard a lot of that in our previous panel as well. So we are adapting. We are being, I think, very nimble in many ways. We could probably list off all the credentials and certificates that we've created in the last year to address technology, to address the changing landscape of workforce development. So, but there are a lot of traditional students. We still house thousands, tens of thousands of students in Colorado, and our student housing, we provide them not only an academic experience, but a life experience of living on their own and working in teams, which you heard was also important. And those are, I think, parts of the educational landscape that are still alive and well.
Anyone else?
I mean, I actually think in some ways, some of the more traditional model of higher education to some students is more important than it ever has been. So we're all innovating in creating certificates, of working with industry, of serving lifelong learners and serving industry and research and things like that. But for these students, we have 35,000 of them over here in Fort Collins. For a lot of them, a lot of the value of going to college is learning how to work with people who are very different from you, learning how to work in teams, right? Living with people, being in labs with people, being in classrooms with people, protesting, counter-protesting, all of those things with people who have come from very different backgrounds than you are. This is a place where they learn that, those social bridges, those social bonds between each other of living with each other, right? On a college campus. Where else are they really gonna get that? We're a research institution, so being in the research labs with faculty, with researchers on the cutting edge, that's important work. So we talk a lot about innovation. I still think that there's a really important place for a more traditional college experience just because of those social bonds that need to happen on a college campus today. So, and our statistics show that 10 years from now, 85% of the jobs that our students are going into don't exist today, right? So we are educating students for the needs of today's workforce. We're creating new certificates, sustainability, cybersecurity, addictions counseling, all of those things. We're also helping students understand how to be good citizens, how to research, how to think, how to work with one another, because the workforce for sure will look different down the road than what they're graduating with today.
I would double down on what Amy just said. If you think about our lives as adults, we sort of vote with our feet, right? We tend to work with people who think like us. We tend to live in neighborhoods who maybe aren't like us. We tend to worship with people who believe the same thing. We just surround ourselves with people who are like us, right? Who vote like us. And college is that one time where you get to experience something that is very different, right? And so I think for a civil society, a pluralist society, it's absolutely vital that we continue to do that. And I'm not exactly sure what we mean by a traditional experience, but I would also say $90,000 a year is unacceptable. Like, that's absurd. Who is going to write a $90,000 check to go to some so-called brand name elite institution? It's absurd. Real people can't do that. And so I would say the elephant in the room is college costs too much across the board. We charge $10,000 a year, we're almost affordable in the state, and it's still too much. Because if you're a first-gen kid who's trying to figure out life, we invited the Colorado Sun to come talk to our board of trustees in January after they did their affordability in Colorado. It is the existential issue that is facing most families in Colorado. It certainly is the most important issue in Western Colorado. You can't afford rent, you can't afford gas, you can't afford groceries. Cultural anthropology degree, are we serious?
Yeah.
Like, that doesn't make sense. We need to be more serious about how to get people in the door and make it affordable. And that's easier said than done, but I will say one of the things we try to do is it's not just stackable credentials. Right? Because that term of art, we've been doing that for something like 35 years. It's like, how do we find students, get them in the door, get them something valuable, and keep them in the door? So one of the things we're piloting for our four-year kids, who, again, disproportionately going to be low-income, first-gen students of color, rural kids, those students, we're going to start piloting providing a certificate during their freshman year so that no matter what happens, right? Same reason we wear a seatbelt on the interstate. You don't expect to get in an accident, we still wear a seatbelt. If you get a certificate that while you're vetting them into those first classes for a bubble kid, right? Kid is sort of not sure about you love math and English and history in high school, right? You get them that certificate. At the worst, if they leave after that first year, they leave with something tangible, something valuable. Best case scenario, we can pop them into on the front end doing something that is stackable, seamless, and all the way through. So at CMU, we've got a technical college component underneath the umbrella of the university. And I will tell you that while the elite institutions have done really important things for this country over the last several hundred years, I don't think they're going to own the next 100 years. You can't at $90,000 a year. I'm not even going to touch what it is they're providing to the communities, because I would figure that they become replication machines, right? Grandma and grandpa had 2.1 kids who went back to same elite institution, had 2.1 kids who went back to same elite institution. And they're not changing anything. They're not growing the community or changing neighborhoods. They're replacing themselves, right? Socially, economically, culturally, politically, they're just replacing themselves. I think what we're trying to do, and I think it's true for every single person on this stage, is we're trying to change family trees, change the trajectory of somebody's life. Because it sends shockwaves when you get that first person through the door of a family to get a college degree.
I know. So, John, I was expecting you to open up the can of worms. You did a great job. I'd love for everyone to respond to this, at least seemingly public perception, but I think we see it in numbers as well. This is higher ed bringing the ROI that it has to bring for the cost. And my perception of each one of you is you've taken a pretty hard look at that question, and you're not doing the $90,000 a year. So
well, all of us have, I think at this point, tuition promises as well. I mean, I think for UNC, if your family's making $65,000 or less a year, you're not paying for college. You're not paying for tuition fees. There's actually legislation that just came out that's going to provide tax credits for folks that are making $90,000 or less. That's the way in which we're looking and trying to be innovative about addressing affordability. Right to John's point. I mean, how do we get students in college and minimize limit debt? And the truth is, as you heard from Amy, I think our debt in Colorado is right around $24,000 as far as the average debt, which is well below, I believe it's $29,000 or $30,000 national debt. So Colorado's doing a pretty good job considering how we're being funded for also trying to make college affordable. And these innovative strategies that we're implementing are even, I think, be more effective in providing an affordable education to students and citizens of Colorado.
Jumping there, y'all are making it real hard to run this last leg on the track. Thinking about what hasn't been already covered, but I will say that in the community college space, the whole idea of what is traditional certainly is a conversation that I believe is having to be had more than ever. As you look again with a national lens, community colleges, for the most part, depending upon the state, you look at a Georgia where you have an actual technical college system that sets different than the community college system. You also see this play out in Texas as well, where I'm originally from. So it is interesting to see now the conversations, just as in business and industry, how you all have conversations about upward expansion and downward expansion. The same conversation is playing out in higher education. The question then becomes is who has the capital and the brand to be able to market penetrate on what they're then changing in terms of their profile. So then it is going to be very interesting, and it's just a demographics game. It's watching what is happening, what is projected to happen based on the 2020 census, and the adjustments that have now been made by the 2015 census adjustments to state then that by 2040 we're aging at a much faster rate. So I would then say in terms of business and industry, there's a few things that you're about to see probably from higher education. One that I'm certainly hopeful that does not play out, but it does require us being very intentional not to step on one another's toes, and that is scope creep. Because as institutions of higher education around the country are seeking to keep their doors open, are seeking to still thrive and survive at the rates that they historically have based on when demographic growth was taking place in the country, it is then important that those missions still remain whole. But then we get into a conversation of what we're watching play out in Florida, where you have community colleges that are offering 4-year degrees. You have Texas, where it is big, they're offering 4-year degrees. Even here in Colorado, we technically can offer 4-year degrees, and our 4-year partners have the ability to offer associate's degrees. So it's going to be very interesting then that we make sure that, as just John was saying, the real fight is in fighting social and economic mobility, fighting poverty, making sure that collectively we are being very strategic about what is happening around our state and the resources that we have available to have innovative, very creative opportunities to where we can penetrate into the market, because the student or the prospective student population is only aging. It is getting older, which means then terminologies and programs like micro-credentials now is the buzzword on what does it take to get business and industry a credentialed workforce as quickly as possible. But how do we do that together?
Can I ask a question of you, Mordecai, on that? So, my perception is that those of us running 4-year institutions need to work with you better, need to work with our community college partners better. Because, you are around the state of Colorado. You're a really important resource, especially to our rural communities, because a lot of students want to start there, start close to home, start in their community colleges. The statistics show that students who are starting at community colleges, about 85% of them want to achieve a 4-year degree at some point. Those that do is under 20%. It's a leaky pipeline of the students who start who want a 4-year degree. So I think it's on us to figure out how to really strengthen those pipelines between the students who start at community colleges and end up with a degree, a 4-year degree from one of our institutions. I don't have the answers here, but I think that focus and that change in institutions like CSU to say, we want your students, because when your students come into CSU after their associate's degree, they succeed at the same levels as the students who start as first-year students at CSU. Those students have grit, they're tremendous students, and we want them at our schools. So we need to do a better job among us, right, across the state of Colorado to make sure that those students who want a 4-year degree can transfer in, that it's easy for them, right, to get in and complete.
I'll quickly just jump in there because she opened up a can. She did it, okay? I think that based on the last panel that was just here about legislation, we have to use then Colorado legislation to our advantage. We have to look at concurrent enrollment. We have to look at PTEX. There is a need to advance more pathways of technology around this state. And I think that CSU, and I think that we've got some amazing opportunities. We just graduated. We had our graduation on Saturday. We just graduated our largest class at the Community College of Aurora of concurrent enrollment students ever. With that said, now you have a stronger K-14 pathway and pipeline, but how do we expand it to K-16? How do we strengthen the brands and these partnerships to where if the student is going to complete that associate's degree in high school, that they're walking right over to a CSU, they're walking right over to a UNC, and we're holding hands together and strengthening that and making it more efficient for these families. That way we can package them even better. And to John's point about making sure that we are reducing the fight on debt or winning the fight on debt.
So we've heard a few things that are broken, potentially, around kind of costs. I'm going to use those words, broken. We've heard demographics are changing, so challenges there. What is working? What are the things that when we think about workforce and where we're headed, what are the things that are still or that are emerging? So new trends that you see that, hey, this is promising. And you've mentioned some of them, but anything you want to talk about that you're seeing at your university that's unique, that is something you're excited about, that you believe is on the right path. That's a softball. Just one.
The best bright guy from Western Colorado.
No, you're doing great.
I would say I don't pretend to understand the challenges that some of my colleagues are dealing with in terms of these larger communities with a multitude of institutions. What I know that is working for us is trying to change the nature of the conversation around trades. It's a vital conversation. I was at a high school last week, and this young woman came up to me with the kind of excitement and optimism that only an 18-year-old graduating senior could have, right? And you would prejudice her just visually as someone who's probably a 4-year kid with like a cheerleader type of kid, and she came up to me and said, I'm coming to CMU. And she didn't talk about CMU Tech or technical. She said, I'm coming to CMU, and I'm going to be a mechanic. It's like, God bless you, girl. That's awesome, because we need more mechanics. And she was super fired up about it. Well, here would be one observation. If higher ed is serious about being relevant, how do we continue to dig in on the trades? Okay? You know, Cornell's not going to offer relevant, right? Why? I would argue because it's a vanity project. If you're serious about being relevant to people, what does the economy need? What does the community need? What does the workforce need? And if you're offering things that you don't need, shame on us. So the more that we can meet the needs of our students are at, dropping off programs that aren't relevant anymore, adding new programs quickly that are relevant. And I will say a quick word. I don't know if you Lieberman is still here. He's a great champion of this idea of these cost-free credentials around a whole series of things, right? Firemen, policemen, welders, mechanics, EMTs, and the like. And we have been a huge power user of this. It is not just that they're getting that credential, they're getting confidence, they're gaining momentum. We had a peach grower in Western Colorado. The kid was not planning on going to college at all, but decided his family needed to grow peaches out in Palisades, and maybe have heard of that place. And sell them here, right?
You sent me some.
Send more.
The thing was, this kid was not going to college at all. He was coming out of the family and was on the farm. Well, he decided it would be useful on the farm. I knew how to weld. So he came and got a welding certificate. And it turns out he's exceptionally bright and very, very good at welding. And the faculty member saw that and encouraged that and turned that into a tutor. And next thing you know, this kid had been admitted to a mechanical engineering program. He's now working over here in Denver, unfortunately, because we can't do that conjunction. But he's working as a mechanical engineer. This is a kid who didn't see himself as college material at all, and got it going because he started in one of the trades and had some success early on. Like those things that can become seamless all the way through, getting the students in, showing them hope, showing them the future, showing them meaning, that's working. And I think the more of that kind of work that we can do in partnership with business, because what do you need? That seems like the right direction.
I'll just add, I think about the students that are at our universities. My university, 43% of them are first in their family to go to college. Over a third are at the poverty line or below and receiving Pell. We're changing people's lives still every day. We just went through graduation. I think all of us went through graduation and I shook 1,500 hands in the last 2 days over the weekend, and the look in their eyes and meeting their families and realizing the impact that this college education made on their life is tremendous. I think we're doing that very well in Colorado.
In terms of good news and what we're excited about, I am so excited about the research ecosystem that is developing not just at CSU, but in Colorado. Colorado is becoming an absolute research powerhouse in the middle of this country. I mean, CSU alone this year, we predict we're going to do $530 million in research, and a lot of that is federally funded research. Some of it are these big grants that we're getting in, that it's big team research with the federal labs in Colorado, with lots of universities working together, like the Co-Y Engines Lab, right? Where it's going to be $160 million over the next 10 years coming into Colorado and Wyoming on climate change projects, right? I mean, we have Marvel Fusion coming to Colorado, bringing the most, I'm not exaggerating, the most powerful laser in the world to help fuel our quantum economy in Colorado, going onto our Foothills Research Campus. Companies like Zoetis, which is the world leader in vaccines for animals, sited in Fort Collins, they brought 100 of their scientists in to live and work inside CSU, working with our talent, working with our researchers. I mean, we're producing startup companies, we're producing hundreds of new patents and innovations every single year. The amount of ripple effect from the research ecosystem from our universities is billions of dollars to the state of Colorado. And we're just coming on, right, in areas of biomedical, in areas of sustainability, climate change, quantum, engineering. It's incredible what's happening in the research ecosystem right now. That helps our students, because students have the opportunity to to live and research and work alongside cutting edge researchers. They have, even our undergraduate students, our graduate students have internships right there. They have jobs right there. Companies are coming here to hire these students, right? And to be close to our talent and close to our research. So we've been talking a lot today about the journey of the student, right? Going through higher ed. But we've got the companies coming to us, you know, companies like Canvas Credit Union. We just did a deal with T-Mobile, Zoetis, Nutrien, who are citing with us to have access to our intellectual capital, access to our students, to our faculty, and our researcher. And that helps the students, but it helps the whole economy of the state of Colorado and certainly the higher ed ecosystem here.
Great work with team. I'll just say that we're really excited at the college. We're in the process of building a new Center for STEM, Power, Mechanic, and Applied Technology. Matter of fact, on Monday, Congressman Jason Crow is going to come and present us with a check for $150,000, and I plan to ask him for more. So that will be taking place. But we're, as we talked about that traditional shift, we're now looking to expand into career and technical education, which was not a part of our original charge as the Community College of Aurora. We're doing this deal along with Oakwood Homes, Pat Hamill. He's bringing Build Strong Academy, and their new headquarters will be within the Center for STEM, Power, Mechanic, Applied Technology. This is going to create a seamless pathway of the non-credit to credit pathway directly towards engineering and construction management, so that's exciting. Also did a deal with Wagner Equipment and Transwest out of Brighton, Colorado, and we're going to now have a training academy for their technicians and their needs. They're out of the Center for STEM, Power, Mechanic, Applied Technology. Also with Aurora Public Schools, we're bringing the first pathway for technology to the city of Aurora. This is essentially an early college high school model cut in half. You have students then that are not being instructed for a full day of high school instruction on the campus. They're being instructed for 4 hours. So the bus will bus them in for 4 hours. They'll receive that instruction. It'll bus them back out. But what this will do is create a new pathway and pipeline towards there being more associates and certificate completers in the high schools. But we're also addressing what seems to be the fight about lack of reliable transportation for many of our families that are seeking social and economic mobility. So we're addressing that head on.
Terrific. Really good. I said earlier, according to the Lumina Foundation, Colorado has one of the nation's most educated workforce, with nearly 63% having at least some form of credentialing in higher ed. I then followed, though, and said that there's more importing than producing, if you will. If you look at the national average is about 61.8% for high school graduates going to college, or nearly 10 percentage points below that in Colorado. From your vantage point, what is that about? What's happening there? We know Colorado's a great state to move to, so we'll start there and say, I'm taking the easy one off the table. What else do you think is driving that? What needs to happen in Colorado to change those numbers, or does it need to happen? What's your view on that 49.9% versus nearly 62% when we compare to the national average?
You know, part of it is we have a pretty vibrant economy. There's a lot of great jobs out there. They pay, very good entry-level salaries. And having students think about the long-range implications of a college degree and the impact it has over a lifetime is something that we need to work on. But that's, I think, indicative of having a great economy. And those are things that we need to make sure that we address with our students about what's the future look like 5 or 10 years down the road, and provide them those opportunities now when they want to be a manager or a supervisor or have a technical skill. Those are things that we can certainly support. We know that 91% of all top jobs in Colorado require a college degree or post-credential, and those are things that we can offer and provide, and we need to, I think, do a little bit more of a job of better educating students as they come out of high school about the impacts of and benefits of going to college. We've also, many of us have created admissions guarantees. We want to make sure that our students, and so many of our students are first in their family to go to college, that they have a place at the university. So we have admissions guarantees now that say in high school that if you have a 3.0 GPA and you take these classes, you're guaranteed admission to our university. So that, along with a tuition promise, we're trying to make it really clear that we want you at our university and you can afford to be there and you should be there.
I'll say for the community college lens, I think about one of our partners here, AD Works, Arapahoe Douglas Workforce Board. I think about the work, thank you, we thank you, that we're doing to really work collectively to get down into these high schools, get into these middle schools, and begin to change what has been a perspective or a perception about who is college material. Everyone is college material. And we have to think about how do we shift that dynamic, especially, heard you say, Andy, over 40% of your student population are first generation. For us, it's over 55% of our student population is first gen. But that means that you're having to shift the dynamic within that household, and that's easier said than done. And how do we add value to that idea? And so I know that there's been some incentive programs that AD Works has done, and we want to continue to partner with them. But it is working with business and industry for us to be very creative but yet intentional on how do we transform what is essentially, in many cases, been a generational curse for that family, to where that child and their dreams and their aspirations have been stifled because they can't see a way towards making that dream a reality. So it's a whole other thing to tell someone, pull them up by the bootstraps, but for many of our families, we're having to show them what bootstraps look like and how they then begin to lace up and have the resources to do that. I think this is the power of something that Amy was saying earlier about internships, externships. It's hard to dream about the thing that you've never seen. So then how do we work with business and industry to create these opportunities where we can bring our children, our young adults, to your companies so they can see themselves? What does it look like for them to sit in that chair? I never thought I was going to be a community college president. I tested at developmental levels in math, and I was working overnight shifts at Bush Intercontinental Airport, breaking down trucks from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., and I made my mother a promise that I would try to go to school. I never knew. This was not my path. But when that light bulb went off, something beautiful happened, and now I want to make that happen for others. But it took someone investing in me and showing me, and the president saying, you know what, you can sit in that seat. How about you sit in that and try it out? And at that point, I began to see the value in myself in that position. And I think all of us have a responsibility to create those kind of dreams.
I want to build on something you just said about, some kids don't even know. And I want to first qualify this question by saying I believe in it's a free country and people should get to choose. Now I'm going to ask this question. There's pretty good data around the value of degrees and differences in the value of degrees, and your ability to make a certain amount of money over time, et cetera, et cetera. What, if any, is the role of higher education in helping young people, because as you said, usually it's right what's in front of you, see the long game of, hey, there's demands in X, Y, and Z fields. These degrees are producing the opportunity, more opportunity for a job. These ones aren't. Do you think there's a role for higher ed in that space? And what is it? And I'm thinking, bridging into the workforce. We know we have shortages. We know there is demand for certain, and we know we don't in other areas, or certainly a lot less demand. How do you all think about that? And what are some of the proactive things we should or are doing to bridge that gap, frankly?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, all 8 of our colleges have industry councils, right, who are working with us all the time, who are working with all of our departments and all of our majors to see where there is demand, where we need to pivot, where we need to give more information. And we do that during the whole admission cycle, all during the year, of talking to students about where the jobs are, what they can expect going forward. I think that we have even more responsibility to be transparent and to deliver information when it comes to master's and PhD programs, especially, because there are a lot of pathways through most of our undergraduate majors, but it is our responsibility to really give good information, especially the higher up that you get. To Mordecai's point, I mean, this game really is won in the off season. I mean, this is working in K-12, right? This is working all the way up. And one thing that we've done, we've just opened up a new campus at the Spur campus at the National Western, if you haven't been there. And those are really focused on K-12 students, right? Coming through, understanding what future careers look like and hooking them there to start thinking about that. And then we refine that information as they go up and then as they ultimately apply and choose their major going through college. Yeah.
So I want to maybe reflect on a couple of things. One is that if you use certain metrics, like what's the earning power of a certain degree, you would say, well, man, I should go get an MBA at Harvard because that appears to be a pretty good return on investment. But it's actually not telling us what we think it's telling us, right? Everybody knows what that degree is. It's not the education. You're buying a social membership card is what you're buying. And so we should be a little bit suspicious of some of this data. That said, if we're serious, again, I'm going to go back to first generation students. If you're serious about first generation students, think about your opportunity and who got you in the door. Think about the networking, the internship, whatever it was that got you started in your career. What first generation students often lack are those connections, right? They don't know what a Bursar is or what FAFSA is or what you're supposed to wear at a cocktail hour or the rest of it. And so one of the things we're experimenting with is what we're calling a springboard fellowship, where we're pairing students, first generation students in their junior and senior year of college with a business mentor that start to talk to them about what does that mean and does what you do for your own kids or the friends of your kids, right? Because if you're a first generation kid and you don't have that adult network in your life, how do you break into that? So even if you have the degree, you actually don't have access. And so we're piloting this idea with some private partners to see, can we demonstrate that actually pairing them with a business person, getting them the kind of social network that they need, and then giving them a small grant at the end of this thing when they graduate to say, here's a small grant to get that first down payment on an apartment, to buy that first business, to get your foot in the door. If you don't have those things, the truth is that the degree is only part of it. We've got to also get them in the door. Because otherwise, how do they wind up in this room? So I think we're going to be able to show some pretty good results out of that program here in about 2 years. But it tells you what we all kind of intuitively know, which is, yes, the education matters. Yes, the credential matters. There's a hell of a lot more to it. And we've got to figure out how to continue to make pathways for those who haven't traditionally had them, which is to say, those who are typically first generation rural kids that haven't often been immigrants.
This is one of the more difficult messages for us all to get out, right? Is that it's easy to look at, this is how much you pay for a degree, this is your starting salary and whatnot, but it's just such a, it's a significant piece and it's something that we're all comfortable talking about. But over the lifetime, not just your earning power, but no matter what your degree is, you're actually healthier, you're able to survive recessions better, you create more jobs. I mean, all of these different social values that come from having that degree and having from that experience that you can't quantify, but we know exists. That's a hard message for us to get out.
I think we could do a better job of providing more career experience to students early in their academic career. There's a lot of research happening where we've got a Lumina grant focusing on career readiness and thinking about how do we expose students in their freshman and sophomore year to jobs that they think they're interested in. So they're not just taking all general education core classes their first year and then they find out in their junior year, this isn't what I wanted to do. So how do we provide, internships, externships, and, work experience early on, let's say even in the freshman experience. I think that's something that we could do a lot better job of at universities.
I have one other thing. There's the inverse of this conversation too. And by that I mean, I'll use our community as an example. Our suicide rate is like 3 times the national average. Okay? The mental and behavioral health needs of our region are significant. And newsflash, you're going to make $60,000 a year as a licensed clinical social worker, an independent provider that can provide mental health care to our community. Who's going to pay $40,000 for a master's degree? You'll make 60. It doesn't make any economic sense. We've got to figure out ways to put a thumb on the scale there. So what we've done is we've partnered with the private industry. Our city chipped in some ARPA funds, we found some grant funds, and what we're doing is we're helping scholarship those individuals while they go to school. But you can't work if you want to, right? You've got to practice hours and everything else. So if you're going to work, you're both trying to earn that credential and then turn around and invest in the community. We're now going to provide some additional dollars as sort of a grant of payment process to keep them in behavioral health deserts like the rural communities in western Colorado. Those are, to me, those are the sort of things that, if it's purely an ROI conversation, you will incent us to do one thing. But the question is, what is it that the return looks like? And there are financial returns and there are social returns. And I would say that we've got to be considering both.
I agree with all of my colleagues up here. The only thing I would say is it's so important that as we talk about first generation students, that we not assume that first generation student then knows that once they do attain that certificate, that degree, that they know how to manage their money. And then we get into a whole nother conversation about literacy and acumen when it comes to finances. And so part of the conversation that we've been having at CCA, even in our English second language program, which has been a very strong program for us, historically speaking, we're now going to embed entrepreneurship into the training of ESL, because we understand that those individuals are coming from other parts of the world, that they have the acumen, yet it is now learning how to maneuver that acumen into the American ecosystem. But then there is the component of students that are now, they're not just first gen, they're now first generation career. So then now that they are a career attainer and holder, what does it mean to balance that check? But what does it mean to invest? What does it mean to diversify yourself? And if there's no one in that household that has ever had that conversation, putting that money in a mattress is not the plan. Burying it in the ground is not the plan. Putting it in a tin and coffee can like they did back in Texas is not the plan. We've got to come up with something better.
I think we're close to our last question, and I will just say, I say this with deep respect for each one of you, because I think in many ways, and I'm not a brown noser, so I'll start there and say, you're exceptions in your pursuit of students first. And I just respect that immensely. And I remember a few years back I was serving on the community college system board here in Colorado. And I can't tell you how many times I heard from the private sector business community, total disconnect, Hanna. Listen, you guys are producing X and we need Y. You're doing, we're putting a ton of money in here, and what's the return for the community? And what are you doing about it? And I just want to serve that up. Do you hear that? And what's the disconnect, and how do we close it from your vantage point? In your communities, are you hearing that feedback at all? And when you hear it, what's your answer, or do you not hear that?
Oh, we certainly hear that. And I've had conversations in my community about healthcare as an example. So Margaret Carson, who is a CEO of Banner Western Region, called me up one day and said, Andy, we need more doctors. We're worried about all the doctors that are retiring and whether or not we're going to have enough folks to serve our community. And so for me, that was, a light bulb went off. I need to think about what we can do to address that. And for 3 years, we focused on building a medical college. So that's kind of responding to concerns and inquiries of our community. We've had conversations locally with UC Health and nursing. They would like to have more bachelor's BSN degrees with their RN. So we've worked with them and focused on a program specifically to meet their needs for more nurses with bachelor's degrees. So I think those are the kinds of conversations we have to have more of, listening to our community, hearing exactly what types of graduates they need, what kind of skills they need to have. And that's kind of the work of being flexible and creative and thoughtful about addressing those concerns. So I think we haven't certainly addressed all of those needs in my community, but certainly the big ones like a medical college is a big undertaking, and there's more of that to come.
Absolutely. We've heard it. I think just the need to be responsive. And I think that's just has to remain at the forefront, especially in the community college space. We talk about how we are the community's college, and that no one should be out communitying. That's not even a word, but I'm going to use it today, the community college. And so that means that in terms of non-credit programs, we've got to create that. Business industry partners need a reliable, sustainable workforce, and we have to be responsive to that. And I believe that we've certainly done so.
Yeah, it's our job to hear that, right? And that's not new. That's what we've been doing for a very long time. Our job, number one, is student success always. And student success looks like getting students in the door that look like Colorado, right? That they are supported. But student success is graduating them, right? It is ending up with a degree, always boosting up our graduation rates, that they've got a degree that's valuable. We know that over 80%, I think it's 86% of our students who are graduating have a job in their field lined up, or further educational plans going forward. So that's great. But our job is to listen to what's needed. We know we need more veterinarians in the state. We need more addictions counselors in the state. So that's what we're doing. We're part of the bill that Andy was successful in of getting money from the state to expand our veterinary teaching hospital. We have the number 2, I think it's actually the number 1 vet teaching hospital in the country, with our new vet hospital that we just broke ground on last week. I think we'll be number 1 in the country, and we serve the entire region in veterinary health. So we are producing more veterinarians in there. Thanks. So that's our job. That's the definition of student success, is to hear that.
We have, similar relationships with business where we meet regularly in all these programs to say, do we have it right? Is the curriculum right? All those things. Maybe introduce one other piece of this that maybe gets whispered about at cocktail hours, but not so much on these sorts of stages, and that is, are the graduates that you're receiving, are they showing up hungry? Are they showing up on time? Are they showing up with creativity, right? Problem-solving skills, the ability to communicate, not text you, but actually call you? I would argue that that's one of the components when we come back to this conversation around traditional college education, because there is something to this figuring out how we work together, figuring out how we educate these students beyond the degree, but truly in education, which is to say, what are those things that bind us together? Not the things that divide us, right? They get that from TikTok. What are the things that actually draw us together? And so I would just point out one thing, and I don't know if this is applicable elsewhere, but I'll just share you one experience that we had. 2 years ago, we sat down as a campus and said, how is it that rather than continue to double down on dissent, we find ways to take a very diverse student body and a very diverse group of faculty and bring them together in one common mission? So we went about this a little bit differently. Rather than trying to go through some focus group politically acceptable statement, we said, what if we all agreed on first principle values? And that might mean something different for all of us, but we tried it. And here's what we landed on. We landed on things like love and dignity and resilience and courage, humility, curiosity. And a lot of people would look at a side like this, are you serious with a public university you're going to lead with the value of love? And my question is, what do you call it? What do you call it when a first generation kid is on his way out the door, somebody grabs him, the custodial member grabs him by the hand and says, no, let's get you a financial aid, you can stay here. Right? The professor sees something you don't see, so like, what do you call that? I call it love. And when you start to find people together in a way where we can see values that we share, and students that can make their way through it because they feel like they actually belong in this place, now we can put graduates out there that show up in their workplace. Hopefully they're a little less demanding, hopefully they're a little more on time, hopefully they're grateful to have a job, and that they've got a little bit of a chip on their shoulder and they're ready to work and hustle and be creative. And I think that's the other component of what we're trying to do. It's not just educate, it's trying to see you escape where the puck's going to be, and that is how do we put a workforce out there that's actually creating outstanding organizations for people.
Will you join me in a full round of applause for all of our panelists? Thank you.